In this lesson, you'll learn how to create your first interactive dashboard. Let's get started. You'll learn how to transform this Excel table into a dashboard. The first step to do so is to create a pivot table. You just click somewhere in the Excel sheet and then you go to the Insert tab. And as you can see, this is already a table because the button is grayed out. There's also on the top an Active Design tab. What we'll do is we'll go to the Insert tab and then click the Pivot Table button. When we click it, we get a pop-up window where you just press OK. As you can see, we go to a new worksheet and on the right the Pivot Table sidebar has opened. All the columns in the table are now displayed over here. Say we want to know how many women are working in the company. There are multiple ways to find the answer using a pivot table. How would you do it? Feel free to pause the video and try it out yourself. When you resume the video, I'll show you how I would do it. One way to do it is to start with the employee number. This means that we examine every single employee. If we drag and drop the employee number variable to the columns, you'll see that we get the unique number of all the employees. In the second step, we can drag and drop the gender variable to the rows as well. When we do that, you can see for every single employee whether they are male or female. However, this doesn't really provide a very clear picture of the information. To get a better overview, you can go to the Design tab, more specifically to the Layout section. Right now, Excel is showing us a pivot table in compact form. However, the best way to work with pivot tables is in the tabular form. If we select this, it will show the information in its own column. However, we are missing an overview because every single row has its own total. To remove this, you can go to the top left where you can find the subtotals. If you open this panel and turn them off, the table will provide a much better overview. You now have an employee number and we also see the gender. Alternatively, you can put the gender in the columns. When we do this, it will display the column and the unique value of the column horizontally. On the top row you see female and male. As you can see, all the values are empty. That's because there's nothing in the value box over here. If you put a value in there, we'll get the full overview of all the variables. So what we can do is we can take one of the columns and drag it once again into the pivot table into the values. The thing is that if a column contains text, Excel will automatically transform the data into a formula. So the text variable, the nominal variable, in this case gender, you either have male or female, two groups, is transformed into a 1 if there's a match and into a 0 when there's no match. So we take the gender column and we drag it to the values. As you can see, each employee is noted as being male or female and there will be a grand total. If we then scroll all the way down, the grand total is 1470. Here you can see the total number of males and females. There are 588 females and 882 males. However, there's an even easier way to get this answer. Let's remove the employee number column. And there we go, we now have an even better overview to see the females and the males and the grand total. Okay, this was a refresher on working with a pivot table. Let's go to the next level and move towards creating a dashboard using these pivot tables. We'll reset everything by removing all the variables from the pivot table. And let's say we have an interest in gender and we want to see what the relationship status is of our workers divided by the gender. What we can do to find this out is we can drag gender to the rows and marital status to the columns. Because we are looking for the totals, we can drag the gender count into the value field. We can now see how many people are divorced, how many females and males are married and how many are single, etc. One of the great things about this pivot table is that you can make a chart of it. And that's an interactive pivot chart. Creating this kind of chart will help you visualize data that you can easily change by changing the pivot table itself. And because it's connected to this pivot table, it's called a pivot chart. To create this, you can click inside the pivot table and go to the tab Analyze. And over here you can see the pivot chart. You click it and you'll see a lot of options. The best way to display this information is a simple bar chart, and it's already on screen. And why do we go for this chart? Because we are working with two groups and both groups have three variables. So this format works really well. To make this look a bit better, we can drag it anywhere in the Excel sheet. Let's place it over here. Now there's a nice trick that you probably don't know yet. To drag visual elements to specific places on the worksheet, you can press the Alt key while dragging them. As you can see, when you move the table around, it will snap to an exact position on the Excel grid. This also works when I resize the table. Again, I hold the Alt key and I make the table smaller. It once again snaps to an exact position on the grid. The result is a chart of the pivot table that functions as a quick and visual overview. Using this approach, we can create all kinds of reports. We are slowly starting to move to a dashboard. Now, most of the time you're not interested in all the data. No, you just want to take a look at a minor selection of the data. For example, you want to focus on people working at a specific department or people who are of a specific age range. To filter on this kind of data, you need slices. To add these slices, you can click inside the pivot table. If we then go to the Analyze tab that we saw before, somewhere in the middle you'll find something called Slices. Click Insert Slices, and if you click that one, you'll see an overview of all the columns of this Excel sheet. Let's say we're interested in age and department. I'm also interested in their education, in their gender, and in the marital status. We review them quickly to see if we selected them all, and we press OK. As you can see, the slices are now added. They are great building blocks for a dashboard. What we'll do now is to create our own dashboard. The best way to do this is to move these slices and the chart into a different Excel sheet. In the left bottom corner you can see the different sheets. This one is actually a pivot table, so let's rename it for clarity reasons into pivot table. We do this by right-clicking it and renaming it pivot. Now everybody understands that this is the worksheet with the pivot table. Let's put all this information into a new tab. If we keep it here, it will look messy because there is an active pivot table on the worksheet. What we can do is we can click Insert and select the first one, called Worksheet. We press OK. For clarity, we can change the name of the new sheet by right-clicking it and selecting Rename. Let's call this Dashboard. We go back to the pivot table, and what we want to do is to take these slices and the chart out of this pivot tab and then move it to the Dashboard tab. To do this, we select the slices by holding the Control key. When you hold the key, you will make multiple selections. I click each slide and I also select the chart, still holding Control. I then press Ctrl X to cut all the elements. If I then go to the dashboard and I click Ctrl V, everything reappears. In order to create a good overview of your data and your slices, you need to rearrange the slices and the tables. That's what I'll do now. We can change multiple design elements. For example, we can make the marital slicer a bit shorter. We can easily do this by holding the Alt key so it snaps right into the grid. Let's snap this into the grid as well, and let's rearrange the other elements. This is a process that often requires quite a bit of trial and error. Just see what works and what doesn't. This is not mathematics. There's no right and there's no wrong. As you can see, this slicer is quite a long list. What I want to do now is change this one column into several columns. So what I'll do is I click on the slicer, and on the top bar you'll see a Slicer Tools tab. In this tab I can give them different colors and make other changes. For example, change the number of columns. Right now the slicer is showing 1 column, but I can change it to, let's say, 5. Now as you can see, there's too much data in the table. It's too narrow. I can make it wider while holding the Alt key. It is not showing all the ages. However, as you can see, it's still too small to contain all the values, so I can add another column. And now everything is properly displayed. We can easily rearrange tables while, again, holding the Alt key. We can even make certain columns smaller to get a clearer and cleaner overview. I will now quickly rearrange some of the other elements. As soon as I select the pivot chart, you'll see that the pivot chart sidebar appears. I can easily hide it because this will make rearranging things much easier. And I can do that by right-clicking the pivot chart and selecting Hide the Field. This provides a clearer overview. I'll now resize this chart element as well. I'll now add some extra rows on top of the table and insert a table. Let's say Analysis HRM. There's still one thing we need to address. As you can see, the guidelines are visible. To get an even cleaner view and make it look even more like a dashboard, we can go to the View tab and uncheck the grid lines. Now it starts looking clean. Let's get rid of some of the rows, and we can also adjust the zoom in the right bottom corner, just so it all fits into one screen. Another option that we haven't explored yet is coloring these slices. If you click the slicer and go to the options on top, you can select specific colors. Let's say we want to make it orange. We'll make education blue and we'll make one of them gray. This option enables us to color the dashboard and create a playful look and feel. We have now finished our first concept dashboard. What can we do with this exactly? You can use the slicers to analyze the data really quickly. Because the slicers are all related to the displayed data, they help you slice the pivot chart. So if I click married, I can see all the people who are married. What you can also see is that people with a certain age are highlighted. These people who are younger, 18, 19, 20 and 21, they are not married yet. Maybe they decided to wait and they're smart kids. How many people do you think are divorced? This answer can be found here. We see that there are a lot of males who are divorced. There's also some females who are divorced. Now be careful before you draw conclusions on this data. There are more males in the total data in the sample than females, so we also expect more males to be divorced. We'll now undo the selection and now we have a full overview. We can see people that are divorced in blue and the ones that are married in orange and the ones that are single who are in grey. We can also filter on specific departments. Let's go for sales. As you can see, the number will drop because we're only looking at the people in one specific department. By using the slicers, we'll have excluded the others. On the filter button, you can see this little red cross. If you click it, all filters are removed and all the data is shown again. In the data definitions, you can easily find which number represents what level of education. So if I select education level 1, 2 and 3, we can easily analyze the level of education and spot different patterns in age, in marital status, etc. You can also do multiple select. You can do this either by pressing the Control key, and what it does, it excludes the variables that we click. So now we have excluded 18, 19 and 20. If we want to do it the other way around, we only want to select these 3 ages, we can unfilter all the data, select only the people who are 20 years old, and then, holding the Control key, also select the 18 and 19 years old. These 3 ages are now highlighted. So these are all the people 18 to 20. They don't have level 4 and level 5 education, they're all single, and there are 14 males and 14 females. We'll now turn this off again, and instead of using the Control key, we can also use this little button to make multiple selections. It's called the multiple select. And as you can see, the shortcut is Alt S. If I now click a number of values, you can see it deselects the values that I select. Here once again we can get rid of the filter by only clicking one value and then selecting the multiple select button. As you can see, we're now only selecting a few ages to display. In this case we selected the people from 18 to 23. We can turn the multiple select off and we can turn the filter off. Now, this was an overview of most of the functionalities that you need in order to build a dashboard. A final thing to mention is that if we filter on the dashboard, the real magic happens at the back end. If we select 18, 24, 30 and 36, you can see that there's a filter active in the pivot table. This filter selects 18, 24, 30, etc. We can get rid of the filter over here. And if we then switch back to the dashboard, you'll see that it's all interconnected. The filters in the dashboard are also gone. Of course, this is an exercise to show you the basics using a very simple and not so actionable example. When you work with HR data, you want to work with more actionable data.